My name is Linda Hartley, and the moment I bent down to pick up my fallen purse in a dim parking garage was the moment my life turned sharply away from everything I thought I understood. I saw it tucked behind the front wheel of my sedan, small and dark and magnetic, a device that did not belong to a 62-year-old widow on her way to a simple business trip. A tracker. Attached to my car, placed there the day after my future son-in-law, Mark Ellison, insisted on taking the vehicle in for maintenance to keep me safe. At first I thought it had to be a mistake, something left behind by a mechanic or part of a routine inspection. But as I crouched there in the cold stillness of that garage, watching a soft glow of afternoon light hit the metal frame of my car, an uneasiness settled deep into my chest. There was no version of reality where this device was innocent. I slid it out carefully, turned it over once in my palm, and felt the weight of a truth I could not yet name. Someone wanted to know everywhere I went. Someone had thought I would never notice. But they were wrong. Instead of ripping the tracker off and demanding answers, something steadier and sharper rose within me. A quiet voice that said to wait, watch, and outthink whoever had decided to follow me. So I stood up, placed my purse over my shoulder, and made a choice that would change everything. This was not going to be the story of a helpless woman. This was going to be the story of how I learned exactly who had underestimated me. Before any of this happened, most people would have described me as ordinary. My name is Linda Hartley, 62 years old, a widow who spent more than 3 decades teaching American history at a public high school in Seattle. I graded papers at the kitchen table, packed lunches, and reminded teenagers that deadlines were not suggestions. It was a steady life, a quiet life, and I was proud of it. But what almost no one knew was that behind that calm exterior I carried a mind shaped by years of discipline and numbers. My late husband, Thomas, used to joke that while he built our world one brick at a time, I kept it standing by understanding every dollar that moved through our hands. He loved big ideas. I loved balance sheets. Together we made a team that worked. When Thomas passed away 2 years ago, the silence in the house was so heavy it felt like another piece of furniture. I found myself drifting through days, doing the things I had always done, yet never feeling fully awake. Grief shifts the way you see everything. It makes you grateful for any sign of care, any voice that seems steady when your own feels unmoored. Maybe that was why I allowed people to assume I was softer than I really was. A woman who lost her husband and might need help managing the things he used to take care of. A woman who might not question a kind gesture or a gentle suggestion. They saw vulnerability. What they did not see was the resilience that had been quietly built over 60 years of living, learning, saving, and surviving. That unseen strength was the very thing that would keep me standing when everything else began to fall apart. Mark Ellison entered our lives the way a well-rehearsed actor steps onto a stage. Smooth, confident, and aware of every angle that made him look dependable. He was 36 tall, clean-cut, and worked in financial planning, a field that sounded impressive enough to calm any doubts a mother might have. My daughter, Brooke, met him at a charity event in downtown Seattle, and from the moment she brought him home, it was clear she had fallen quickly and deeply. Brooke had always been the kind of young woman who led with her heart. After losing her father, she searched hard for stability and warmth, something that felt safe enough to lean on. Mark gave her that illusion. He pulled out chairs, carried groceries, asked thoughtful questions, and showed up with fresh flowers for no reason at all. He was the sort of man who made people feel seen, and that is a powerful skill when used with sincerity or deception. I wanted to be happy for her. For a while I was. Our Sunday dinners felt fuller, lighter. Mark listened when I spoke about Thomas, and he never tried to rush my grief. He even offered to help me sort through old paperwork, claiming he wanted to make things easier for me. At the time, it felt like kindness. Later, I would realize it was reconnaissance. There were signs, small ones, that I pushed aside. The way he casually steered conversations toward finances. The way he asked about my retirement accounts as if it were ordinary dinner talk. The way he seemed unusually interested in where I kept important documents. But hope can be a strong force. I wanted to believe Brooke had finally found a partner who valued her. I wanted to believe Mark was exactly who he appeared to be. I was wrong, terribly wrong. The tracker lay in my hand, like a question I did not yet know how to answer. It was small, smooth, and designed to blend into the shadows beneath a car. Someone had placed it there with intention, someone who expected me to go about my day without ever noticing. As I stood alone in the parking garage, the air cool and echoing around me, a strange calm settled over my thoughts. Years of teaching had trained me to observe patterns, to listen for what was not being said, and this device was speaking volumes. I remembered the moment Mark had offered to take my car to the shop. The gentle insistence, the reassuring smile, the way he had returned the keys with a checklist that seemed a little too detailed for a routine oil change. At the time, I had brushed it off as his way of being helpful. Now those memories rearranged themselves into something far more unsettling. Why would Mark, of all people, want to track me? I told myself there had to be a logical explanation. Perhaps he worried about my safety on long drives. Perhaps he misunderstood boundaries. Perhaps this had nothing to do with him at all. But even as I reached for possible excuses, my instincts whispered otherwise. This was not normal. This was not innocent. I slipped the tracker into my purse, keeping my expression neutral as I walked to my car. It was important not to react too quickly. A wrong move could reveal that I knew more than I was supposed to. Driving out of the garage, my hands trembled only slightly on the wheel. Suspicion had found its way into my life, quiet but undeniable. And I knew I could not ignore it. Once I understood the tracker was no accident, a different part of me awakened. It was the same steady resolve I used to rely on during chaos-filled school days, when 30 restless teenagers tried to test the limits of my patience. I had learned long ago that reacting out of fear rarely led anywhere good. What mattered was thinking clearly, moving deliberately, and never letting the other side know what you truly understood. So instead of confronting Mark or calling Brooke, I drove to a quiet corner of a truck stop just outside Seattle. The tracker rested in my purse, humming with possibilities I had never imagined would touch my life. Semi-trucks lined the lot, idling as drivers stretched their legs and prepared for long hauls across state lines. I found one with Alberta plates heading north, the perfect escape route for whoever believed I could be monitored without question. I crouched down, attached the tracker to the underside of the trailer, and stepped back with a breath I had not realized I was holding. Let whoever planted it think I was on my way to Canada. The moment the truck pulled onto the highway, carrying my supposed location across the border, I felt something shift inside me. I was no longer the woman being watched. I was the woman watching back. On the drive home, the pieces began forming a pattern that was difficult to ignore. Mark asking about my investments, Mark learning my schedule, Mark pushing Brooke to move in with me. None of it had seemed dangerous before. Now it glowed with meaning I could no longer dismiss. Someone had started a game with me. They had no idea I was prepared to play. The next morning began like any other. I brewed coffee, opened the curtains to a pale Seattle sky, and tried to steady the thoughts that had followed me through the night. The tracker was gone, carried north by a trucker who would never know he had already saved my life. I expected a day of waiting and watching, a day of quiet vigilance. What I did not expect was the phone call. A number from Alberta lit up my screen. I almost let it ring, assuming it was a wrong number, but something in me paused. When I answered, a calm, authoritative voice introduced himself as Sergeant Daniel Ward with the Royal Canadian Mounted Police. "Ma'am," he said, "we have detained a man at a rest stop outside Calgary. On his person we found a photograph of you, your home address, and detailed notes about your daily movements." For a moment the room around me blurred. I gripped the counter to steady myself. Sergeant Ward continued, "His name is Anthony Reyes. He claims he was hired to stage a kidnapping. He said the plan was to make your disappearance look real, then demand money from your family. According to him, the person who hired him promised a large payment upon completion. He only knows the employer by initials, M.E. The initials echoed in my mind like a warning bell. I asked the sergeant what Reyes had intended to do next. He replied, "He said he was waiting for confirmation that your car had reached the target location. Since it did not, he became suspicious." The truth settled slowly into place. This was not a misunderstanding. This was a plan. And whoever MME was, I already knew him. After the call ended, I stood in my kitchen with the quiet hum of the refrigerator filling the silence. I had just learned that someone intended to make me disappear, and the man hired to do it was now sitting in a Canadian jail cell. Fear was still there, but it no longer controlled me. Instead, a clear purpose rose to the surface. If someone had targeted me, then someone could be exposed. so I began assembling my own team. My first call was to Henry Cole, the accountant who had helped Thomas and me manage our finances for nearly 20 years. Henry was meticulous, a man who could spot a misplaced decimal from across the room. When I told him that I suspected someone had been meddling with my accounts, his voice sharpened. "Linda, give me a few hours. I will look at every statement from the last 3 years." Next, I contacted attorney Marissa Doyle, a woman whose calm confidence could steady even the most chaotic situation. I explained the tracker, the call from Alberta, and the initials ME. Marissa did not gasp or express shock. Instead, she said, "Linda, if someone is trying to manipulate your finances or your safety, we will find them. I will begin with a background check on Mark Ellison." The last call I made was to Sam Calder, a private investigator and former FBI field agent. Sam had a quiet way of reading between the lines. When I told him that someone had planted a tracker on my car, he did not hesitate. "I will follow him, Linda. I will watch everything he does. No one will know." By noon, 3 professionals were digging into the pieces of my life that I had always assumed were safe. Every hour they worked brought new clarity. Every report confirmed an unsettling truth. Someone had not only planned to take my freedom, they had already begun taking my money. And the initials ME were starting to look less like a mystery and more like a name I wished I had never let into my home. By the next afternoon, the pieces that Henry, Marissa, and Sam uncovered no longer formed a puzzle. They formed a confession, not spoken aloud, but written clearly in patterns of withdrawal, false identities, and a trail of ruined lives stretching across several states. Henry called first. His tone was measured, but the words carried weight. "Linda, someone has been moving money out of your accounts for nearly a year. Small withdrawals, time to blend in with your regular expenses. The total is just under $30,000. Whoever did this knew your spending habits intimately." I thanked him, though my heart tightened. There was only one person who had recently taken such an interest in my records. One person who had insisted on helping me sort through old files. Marissa called next. Her voice was calm, but her words cut sharply. "Linda, Mark Ellison is not who he claims to be. His real name appears to be Miles Easton. He has used at least 3 identities over the past decade. He was dismissed from 2 financial firms for questionable interactions with older clients. Several civil complaints were filed, but none went to trial." I closed my eyes, letting the truth settle in. Miles, not Mark. A man with no past that could be verified, no friends from childhood, no family to speak of. A man who reinvented himself whenever the consequences grew too close. Then Sam delivered the final blow. "Linda," I followed him to a storage facility on the edge of the city. Inside his unit were boxes of financial statements, copies of identification documents, and files belonging to several women older than you. "Based on what I saw, you were not his first target. You are at least the 5th. 5th. The word echoed. 4 other women had trusted him before me. 4 had watched their savings disappear while he smiled and pretended to care. In that moment, the fear I had been carrying transformed into something steadier, colder, and far more certain. I knew exactly who Miles Easton was, and now I knew what he had done. I spent the rest of that day preparing for a conversation I knew would mark a dividing line in my life. There would be the world before the truth and the world after it. What I needed most was clarity, and what Brooke deserved was honesty. So I called her and suggested a quiet dinner at my home, just the 3 of us. She sounded delighted. Miles, still going by Mark, accepted without hesitation. I roasted chicken, set the table with the china Thomas had given me on our 10th anniversary, and tried to steady the tremor beneath my ribs. This was my home, my table, my life. I refused to let fear claim any of it. Brooke arrived first, full of warmth and excitement, telling me about floral arrangements and guest lists. I listened, nodding, letting her enjoy a few moments of innocence before everything changed. When Miles stepped through the door, he wore the same polished smile he always carried, the one that had fooled all of us for so long. Dinner began peacefully. We talked about work, wedding plans, and the weather turning colder. I waited until dessert plates were cleared and Brooke moved to the sink to rinse the dishes. Then I set my glass down and looked directly at the man who had mapped out my life with the intent to steal it. "Mark," I said quietly, "why did you put a tracker on my car?" His smile faltered, then returned with a gentler expression, as if he believed he could talk his way out of anything. "Linda, I think you may be mistaken." I stood, walked to the sideboard, and returned with the photographs I had taken of the device. I placed them in front of him. Then I set down the printed report from Sergeant Ward in Alberta. On top of that, I placed Henry's findings. Finally, I added the list of aliases Marissa uncovered. Brooke turned, confused. "Mom, what is all this?" I met her eyes. "Sweetheart, the man you know as Mark is not who he says he is." The room fell silent. For a moment, no one moved. Then the veneer cracked. Miles Easton, the man who believed he could outsmart everyone, showed his fear. The weeks that followed felt unreal, as if my life had been tilted onto a new axis. After Miles fled my dining room and was tackled by officers waiting outside, everything moved quickly. Statements were taken. Evidence was cataloged. Brooke stayed with me for several nights, drifting between anger, shame, and disbelief. And soon enough, the case went to trial. On a cold January morning, I walked into the courthouse wearing a navy suit that made me feel steady, anchored. Brooke held my hand as if drawing strength from the simple act of standing beside me. At the defendant's table, Miles sat hunched, no longer polished or charming. He looked smaller than I remembered, swallowed by a suit provided by the county. The prosecution presented the case with precision. They laid out the financial records, the tracker, the testimony from Sergeant Ward, the surveillance from Sam, and statements from previous victims who had once trusted Miles as completely as Brooke had. Every fact painted him not as a misguided man, but as a practiced predator. Then came the defense. Miles took the stand, shifting from contrition to accusation with unsettling ease. He claimed that I, of all people, had partnered with him. He insisted that I had discovered his schemes months earlier and agreed to remain silent in exchange for a share of the profits. He said that I had turned on him only when the Canadian arrest threatened to unravel our supposed partnership. Listening to him was like listening to someone describe a dream I had never had. His lies were layered, rehearsed, intricate in all the wrong ways. For a moment, I felt a flicker of old fear. What if the jury believed him? But the prosecution understood something vital. A liar, when desperate, reveals far more than he intends. During cross-examination, every detail of his invented story began to collapse under the weight of simple questions. Questions only an innocent person could answer honestly. By the time he stepped down, the jury had seen exactly who Miles Easton truly was. And none of it resembled the man he pretended to be. When the verdict was finally read guilty on all counts, the courtroom seemed to exhale all at once. Miles Easton sat motionless, as if the weight of the sentence had pinned him to his chair. 26 years in federal prison. Restitution to every victim he had deceived. No opportunities left to reinvent himself or hide behind another borrowed name. For the first time in months, I felt my shoulders lower, not in victory but in release. Brooke and I walked out of the courthouse into a sky washed clean by winter rain. She slipped her arm through mine and said quietly, "Mom, we are going to be all right." It was not an apology. It was a promise. In the weeks that followed, we both worked to rebuild a sense of normalcy, yet something in me had shifted permanently. I could not forget the women whose lives had been stripped bare by Miles long before he reached mine. Their stories lingered with me, the fear in their voices, the uncertainty about how they would start over. I realized then that simply surviving was not enough. I needed to do something that mattered. So I founded the Hartley Foundation for Senior Financial Safety, a small but determined organization focused on teaching older adults how to protect themselves from financial predators. We hosted workshops, partnered with community centers, and built a hotline for those facing suspicious situations. Brooke took on the role of program director, her empathy turning into strength as she helped others navigate dangers she once knew too closely. Each month I met people who reminded me why this work mattered, people who had trusted the wrong person, people who believed they had to face their fears alone. I wanted them to know they never had to. Looking back now, it still amazes me how quickly an ordinary life can be thrown off its familiar path. One quiet afternoon, one fallen purse, one small device hidden beneath a car. Sometimes danger arrives softly, without warning, disguised as routine. And sometimes the person behind it is someone you once welcomed into your home with an open heart. But here's what I learned. Fear does not define us. What we choose to do next does. I learned that staying silent rarely protects us. Asking questions, even uncomfortable ones, can save our lives. I learned that age does not make us fragile. It makes us perceptive. It gives us the instincts that younger versions of ourselves never had the patience to listen to. And I learned that even the most carefully crafted mask can crack under the weight of the truth. If there is something I hope you carry with you from my story, it is this: trust your instincts. Notice the small things, and never believe that being underestimated is a weakness. Sometimes it is the greatest advantage you have. Today my life is quieter again, but not smaller. I work with people who remind me daily that resilience is not a dramatic moment. It is a steady choice, made again and again, to stand up even when the ground has shifted beneath you. Thank you for listening and for spending this time with me. If this story resonated with you, I hope you will like, share, and leave a comment below. Your voice might be the reminder someone else needs to hear today. And remember, you are stronger than you think, and you are never as alone as you fear.